Welcome back to the JP Eisenhower Show. I'm your host, JP Eisenhower, here with special guest Connell Scruggs this week to talk college football. Connell, thanks for being here.
Anytime, JP. It's a pleasure.
The first one is going to be one that hits close for you. Is Alabama a playoff team?
Um, I think they are a playoff team if they prove themselves here with this win over Auburn coming up this Saturday in the Iron Bowl. I think if they beat Auburn by a couple scores, I'd say 10 points, 10 to 15 points. If as long as it's over 10 points, I think it's a convincing victory, especially considering that they have their backup quarterback Mac Jones in, who's only played one full game this season, and with the loss of pretty much their star player Tua Tagovailoa. If Alabama can show that they win convincingly over Auburn, I think that with the loss to LSU only by 5 points, and with Tua being uh, just barely off surgery, only off surgery for about 20 days, I think in a surgery that's supposed to have about a 4 to 6 month recovery period. He comes and plays after 20 days, and they still only lose by 5. So I think that loss to LSU isn't really a huge, you know, isn't really a huge problem, uh, especially if LSU wins out. So the one loss to LSU, the win over Auburn, they would have taken care of everyone except for LSU. Um, and I think they should be able to sneak into that fourth spot as long as Utah doesn't beat Oregon by a pretty good amount. I'd say 15 points or more. If Utah wins that game by 15 points or more, I think they're in.
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Connell. I really do not see Alabama as a playoff team this year. Obviously, throughout their history, they're a really prestigious football school. You see them year in and year out competing. But when you look at this team, it's not built like those teams in the past. The defense is really struggling for Alabama. The run game is really the one bright spot because now you have Tua Tagovailoa out for the season, and I'm not really sure I trust Mac Jones week one against an Ohio State or an LSU. If Tua couldn't beat LSU, why am I supposed to believe that Mac Jones could? Why should the committee put them in over a team like Utah, which may have a better chance against a team like LSU or Ohio State, and knowing that Alabama will lose that game? They're not the team that they were. And when you look at them compared to Utah, because Mac Jones is their quarterback, it just doesn't look as good to the committee. And I really don't think you can put Alabama in this year, really, no matter what happens in the Auburn game.
Okay, well, let's talk about this Utah situation because as of now, the big threat to Alabama making it in that fourth spot is Utah because it's Georgia and LSU are playing in the SEC championship, so most likely Georgia's going to lose that game and drop out of the top four because they'll have two losses. So that fourth spot's going to be open, and the teams contending for it right now, at least as long as what is predicted will happen happens, right? Georgia loses, and you know. Baylor or Oklahoma wins the conference championship. And what happens if Utah wins only by a couple points to a two-loss Oregon and Alabama beats Auburn by about 10, 15 points? Would you still put Utah in over Alabama?
When you look at how the committee is looking at teams, they really do the eye test a lot. And when you look at Mac Jones, that does not pass the eye test for me at all. He is not a quarterback that's going to be able to lead you through the playoffs, and you don't have that defense to really bail you out anymore because this defense we've seen really struggle throughout the season. Those linebackers, they're inexperienced, and we thought they were getting better, and then LSU really exposed them. LSU is a great offense, but your defense should not be playing that poorly, especially when some of your top players are getting destroyed down the field and really not having a good game at all against a really talented team. You have to have good games against talented teams in order to be in that playoff
Well,
conversation. That first
I think
half,
they did have a good game. It was really just the defense and injuries play a lot into that, right? But also Nick Saban has been in this position before. Tua Tagovailoa is really the only quarterback he's had that has been phenomenal. Everyone else has been a game manager in the past, and I think if they prove themselves versus Auburn this week, they have a chance to prove that they should be in playoff contention. I think the one loss was to LSU, who is right now the number two ranked team on the committee, but they should be number one. I think that them being jumped by Ohio State's kind of ridiculous. Um, but a loss by 5 to the number one team shouldn't really just absolutely destroy you and bring you out from the playoff conversation, especially even with Mac Jones, because this game that versus Auburn, it depends on how he plays. If Mac Jones plays well versus the Auburn defense, I think he will have proven himself and proven that although he's not Tua. Everyone knows that he's not Tua. He has a chance to go out there and compete and try to make it a game.
Yeah, and you mentioned the past Alabama teams not really having a quarterback, but the difference is those Alabama teams had a defense, and Alabama really does not have a defense this year. I don't know if they're good enough to compete with Mac Jones as your quarterback because this team is really meant to outscore you this year with a struggling defense and Tua as your quarterback. And now with Mac Jones, I'm not sure they can outscore people. We're going to move into the next topic now. Another Alabama topic for Connell. Is Tua a first round quarterback in the NFL draft this year?
I think at the beginning of the season, especially through the first part of the season, um, he looked like a number one pick pretty much. Tua was pretty much the number one consensus pick, and then Joe Burrow happened to have a fantastic season, so now Joe Burrow seems to be the number one pick. And then you add on that hip injury, which is going to see him sidelined, not even throwing a football for a few months. So that really hurt his chances, but I still think even with that, he should be a late first round pick. With teams looking for a quarterback this year. The Dolphins seem to be looking for a quarterback, right? And JP, you're an NFL guy, so you know teams that are looking for the talent that the team's looking for quarterback talent more than I do. But I think based on what Tua has shown, his ability to read defenses extremely quickly, pre-snap, post-snap, and hit guys in stride. His accuracy is unmatched, especially downfield. His accuracy is unmatched in college football. And I think his poise in big situations and his touchdown to interception ratio is also unmatched. I think he's only thrown about 8 interceptions over his college football career, that's crazy over 2.5 years. I think in his poise and his poise in the pocket, he's got pocket presence, and I think he'll learn in the NFL. His strength and his weakness at the same time is his ability to extend the play, right? He can extend the play, make something out of nothing. When the play seems like it's over, he finds a way to extend it. But that's caused all of his injuries so far. In the NFL, you can't really, he'll learn to throw it away. But I think all that considered, even with the injury, he's still a first round quarterback.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you again here, Connell. There's two reasons that I have to disagree with you. And one is just the teams that need a quarterback aren't there this year. And if they are, they're going into free agency most likely to get Marcus Mariota or Ryan Tannehill, who's been playing great, or possibly Nick Foles if Garner Minshew pushes him out of the job. And I really just don't see a team this year that really would need one. And obviously, I could say Dak Prescott in there, but we're expecting the Cowboys to most
Yeah, I
likely
think Dak will be
franchise him,
fine.
especially after Jerry Jones' quote this morning where he said, I've not known to been one who has hand cramps writing checks. So I'm guessing Dak Prescott might be getting a big contract soon. But Tua is just, along with not having a lot of teams needing a quarterback, I have Tua ranked as my fourth quarterback right now just because of the
Ooh,
injuries.
who's above
Just
him?
because of the injuries. Because when you look
Who do
at
you
it,
have above him?
I have the obvious ones. I have
Joe
Justin
Burrow.
Herbert, Joe Burrow, and then
Justin
I have
Herbert.
Justin Herbert above him
Interesting.
right now, especially with that size and this. I mean, a lot of teams are going to want his physical attributes,
Mm,
and right
I
now
don't know about Herbert above Tua.
because of the injury, I do have Jake Fromm above him, just because Jake Fromm's
Wow.
not injured. Jake
Okay.
Fromm is playing
It doesn't
games,
matter.
and when you look at Tua, here's what I'm looking at. I'm not imagining I'm a fan looking at his talent because his talent's undeniable. But I'm thinking as a GM, after what just happened in Indianapolis with Andrew Luck, who had an injury history, looking at Tua, who had 4 injuries in 2 years, and they're all lower body injuries, thinking he's a high injury risk with how he plays. I'm not so confident in picking him. If I was a GM in the first round, I'm not selecting Tua Tagovailoa because I just do not trust him enough as to protect himself, one, and to stay healthy. I really don't think you can have a quarterback who's never on the field as a first round pick.
Well, although Tua has been injured, it's mostly, as I said, because he's extended the play, not because he's been sacked, which, you know, it obviously can be corrected, right? The ability to extend the play is a thing. it's an attribute that's sought after, but also, like you look at Russell Wilson. He's best when he's extending the play. I think Tua is a Russell Wilson type of guy, except he's not as durable. I think he can definitely be coached up to throw the ball away, as I've said. And Justin Herbert, you talked about Justin Herbert being better. He's ranked 20th in QBR this season for college football, the entire college football. And Jake Fromm really he's more of a game manager than a guy you really want to have on your NFL team. He's more. I see him more as a what? Who's the quarterback for Auburn last year? Well, I forget his name.
Stidham, Jared Stidham.
See it, Jared Stidham. I see him more of a Jared Stidham and a guy that he gives the ball more. He's more of a dink and dunk kind of guy. He's not going to really impress you with his arm talent downfield. Jake Fromm, he hasn't really impressed me that much, really. He tends to have games too where he has meltdown games. He'll have two or three of those per season where he just totally melts down. You saw in the South Carolina game, he had three interceptions that were just absolutely horrible. Um, Although Fromm is a great quarterback. It may seem like I'm ragging on him, but he's a great quarterback. I see more talent out of Tua, and I think I would take Tua over. The only guy I would take over Tua, let's just say this, only guy I would take over Tua is Joe Burrow, and just based on what he's shown this season
Yeah,
and his professionality.
obviously talent wise, Tua is probably the best, but I just don't trust it with that injury history. The difference between those three guys that we mentioned in Tua is those three guys aren't injured. Those three guys are healthy and they're with their teams making a push, except for now Oregon after that big loss. And we're going to go into one last topic. The committee released their top 25. Connell, who do you think is the most underrated team?
Um, you know, I would say Utah, but it's less of the rankings than it is the talk around Utah. Utah is ranked number 6 right now, right behind Alabama, and we were just talking about them in relation to the playoff picture. But people really aren't talking about Utah. They're number 6. They've pretty much handled everyone they've played this season without, excluding USC. And that loss at the time looks really bad because it was the third string quarterback, Matt Fink, who was playing and diced them up. They won 30-23. But now USC is ranked. So that loss keeps looking better and better for Utah, and that's their one loss. Only thing that hurts Utah is they haven't beaten a ranked team yet this season. Although they have handled everyone else that they've played, they've beaten everyone that they've been expected to beat, including Washington. They beat Washington 33-28, although Washington doesn't look that good right now. But they control their own destiny. If they win out and I think if they beat Oregon, like I said, if they beat Oregon by 10 plus points, 14 plus points, I think they're in the playoff, and that'll be the first. No, it won't be the first Pac-12 team. It will be the first time Utah has made it into the college football playoff, and the first time Alabama has not made it into the college football playoff.
Yeah, I really like Utah, but I'm going to go with another team that can win the conference championship still, which makes them really a competitor in the playoff conversation, and that's Baylor. I think Baylor is really one of the teams that we keep asking week to week, are they actually a good team? And I think we saw, even though Oklahoma, they ended up losing after they self imploded in the fourth quarter, but they really handled Oklahoma in the first half of that game. And I think that's the part everyone forgets. They're winning games by like really dominant fashion. I mean, the defense is showing up. You saw last week versus Texas. Really, they gave up 3 points. They gave up the touchdown in garbage time with 4 seconds left. But their defense continues to play incredible, and the quarterback Charlie Brewer continues to play incredible. He's really moved into that fourth, fifth round discussion if he wants to go into the draft. And I think it's really Baylor is one of the more underrated teams because the committee's not really looking at them that much. They are ranked ninth, but I think that this is really a top 5 team. This might not be this year. I mean, when you look at the talent, it's obvious you could say Utah is better than them, but I would take Baylor over Utah if Baylor and Utah played. I really like this Baylor team, and I think this team is really special. I think this is like UCF just a few years ago when they really had their dominant team and everyone kind of rode them out and didn't let them into the playoffs. That team could have made some noise in the playoff, and I think this Baylor team could make some noise in the playoff if they had the chance.
Yeah, and JP, you talked about Baylor being a great team. What do you think? I think they're still in the playoff conversation. What is what's the scenario where Baylor's going to make it in and sneak into that fourth spot?
I think they need to play Oklahoma like they did in the first half, but for the entire game in the conference championship. And I think they need an Alabama loss would help to Auburn, but I don't think it's necessary. And then I think Utah needs to lose in the conference championship. And I think the committee, there's no way that they can't put them in if Baylor really handles Oklahoma and Auburn, and then Auburn either plays really close Alabama, or even if Alabama wins that game, I still think Baylor, because they have their starting quarterback, would be a better team. And that's going to be it this week on the JP Eisenhower Show. Join us next week as we'll be talking NFL headlines. That's going to be it, and I'll see you next week on the JP Eisenhower Show.